What's happening, guys? Chris from NCG here, and today we are doing another TCG community showcase. Today I'm interviewing NCG's very own Jonathan Waters. How are you today, Jonathan?
Very well, thanks.
For anyone out there who does not know, Jonathan is a former Irish national champion. He won back in 2015, I believe, 2014. You won with Mermeal. How was that event?
Sorry?
How was the event in general? How'd it go?
For nationals?
Yeah.
I remember, it was an early start. I had to get up at 5:30, 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
To start making my way down to Dublin. And it just sort of went down and was going down just to try and top, really, and just ended up getting a bit further than I expected.
Yeah, fair. How much sort of testing and theory did you put into the tournament?
At the time, if I remember rightly, up north, we didn't really have a lot of people playing Fire Fist, so I did play a couple of mirror matches with Luke Smythe at the time. We were up at Dragon Slayers, if I remember rightly, testing. It might have been a 24 event or something.
Yeah.
But other than that, didn't get too much testing, but played the mirror a wee bit because I expected it to be the most popular deck at the time.
When preparing for Irish events, is there something you believe you need to do differently than, say, if you're going to the YCS that you went to before? Are they different prep-wise?
Prep-wise, I think it's pretty much just the same, really, just play test and things like that. I suppose when you're going down to the likes of Dublin for events, the room's a lot more diverse than, a YCS, so you might face a lot of unexpected decks, rogue decks pretty much, and I suppose you should keep that in mind. As opposed to, for example, in this format, if I was going to a YCS, I'd be importing 3 copies of Winter Cherries just to deal with Spyro, because I think it's still the best deck in the format.
Yeah.
But if I ever went to Dublin playing a deck, I would never mainboard Cherries, because there's just the fear that it'd be dead in too many matchups.
Yeah, so the diverse room sort of puts you off those anti-meta choices?
Yeah, I suppose you could say that, but having been to Dublin not too long ago at the CTS as well, I played a lot of Magician, so know firsthand that as of recently there have been a couple of different decks in the room. True Draco was another one, and just loads of different types.
For the Irish events, whenever there's a list published by ourselves or Curry Rose, there always seems to be quite a backlash that say, oh, it's an Irish event, it doesn't count. Do you believe that's true, or would you argue against that?
No, I think it's just ignorance, to be honest. We can't all have, 700, 800 man regionals. It just doesn't happen. And it's just that, Ireland in general, its player base isn't as big as, say, the likes of America, which is, absolutely barbaric in size.
Yeah.
But I just think it's mostly, I would say, Americans as well, not to, judge a whole group of people, but it does seem to be, a couple of Americans sometimes who are coming on and saying, that event's really small, we have, X amount of players in the hundreds region, and we just don't get that, and I don't think we will, to be honest, just because we're, a much smaller country as well, and there's just a lot less interest, while America's just, they have things like the ARGs and stuff like that, and we just don't have the players to get events like that, unfortunately.
Yep, that's fair. The Belfast community has gotten bigger in the past while, but there is quite a divide between the competitive and the casual player. Do you believe there's a way how you can shorten that gap, or do you believe it's always going to be there?
No, you're going to get anywhere you go. I'd say even in, like I was saying, America, I'm sure you have a lot of people who play the game who are a lot more casual, and then you have the competitive players. But regardless, because our community is so small, I think the thing that we should be focusing on right now is getting more players into the game and not worrying too much about whether they're casual or competitive, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's just about the numbers really, and regardless of whether you're casual or competitive, I feel that everybody should be on the same page, and we shouldn't have a big divide over it. I think it's really silly.
Describe Irish events as particularly difficult, or do you always have an expectation when you're going down to the event of how well you're going to do, gauged by the player base or anything like that?
I think in general we should really consider Irish events as any other event, really. I think it's, ignorance to suggest that just because it's, a smaller event, it doesn't really matter. I personally, I still find them difficult. I always say that you just have to go down and it just needs to be your lucky day, really. The same with any event, you need that bit of luck to win. I don't think there's really anybody that's, won the likes of a YCS without that little bit of luck to get them through the day. That's just the same for us. There's a lot of good players down south, and we have good players up north. And like I say, you just need that bit of luck to get through.
That's fair. So you specifically, what part of the game got you into it, and what part of the game is sort of keeping you going?
Well, I mean, I didn't start the game until a bit later. I played the video games when I was much younger, and I didn't start playing the card game until I didn't start playing competitively till about 2010, 2011.
Yep.
The thing that I suppose keeps me going is, for me personally, I come in and out of the game quite often because of either I don't like the format or there's just not a deck I enjoy. But I suppose at the minute, I actually feel the game's quite diverse, despite, I would say, Spiral being arguably the best deck. I still think that there's other, you see other decks top, and especially down south, and it's just really nice to see that the diversity in the game, as opposed to when Spiral first came out and we had, what was it, 29 out of 32 or something?
Yeah.
At YCS, which is just really dull, to be quite honest.
Yep, absolutely. So you yourself is quite a budget player. Try your best, obviously, to compete on a limited budget. Do you believe that is achievable in the game right now or in the future, or is it just sometimes we have to just pack it in and buy the expensive cards?
As of right now, I think that if you were going to travel to things like YCSs and things like that, you sometimes sadly need to put your hand in the pocket and just buy the cards. I myself went down to Dublin and I didn't have any copies of Ash. The list I played at the CTS had no Ashes because I didn't have any. And to be honest, if I was travelling to much bigger events, I would probably at that stage be forced to put my hand in my pocket to buy a set of Ashes. But I think for smaller events you can get away with it within reason. But it honestly depends on the format. Sometimes you'll get a format like when we had Monarchs where, you could spend like 50 quid and you had a tier 1 deck and you could compete with that, and it was great.
Yep, absolutely. So you yourself is sponsored by ourselves, NCG. There's a lot of teams, especially down south, but there is a couple up north. What's your opinion on teams? Do you think teams are important to the growth of the community, or are they just like a sort of muck about with your friends sort of thing?
I mean, personally, I was very against teams. I didn't see any benefits into them because they kept using, the same reasoning we have. We have our own group to test with, and we can lend each other cards. And I just sort of think, well, if I'm on good terms with people in my locals, I don't see why I shouldn't be able to do that anyway. But I suppose there are a lot of players, who just don't have the time to sit down and test with other players in their locals, maybe due to work or university or real life issues essentially. But I suppose the team thing's really nice because you can get together and you can arrange a time for it, and I suppose it does help strengthen their bonds with each other, I suppose, just to get along, which is it's always a good thing.
Yep, fantastic. The state of the game currently, what do you believe is the best deck right now, and have you looked forward into the future for sets or cards coming out? Is there any card you're excited for?
Admittedly, I haven't really been keeping up with most recent sets. I'm generally the last person to find out about the next broken card. As for the best deck at the minute, I think it's just Spiral hands down. And then other decks are sort of mingling. You have things like Pendulum Magician's really good. Trickstar's solid. And if Evenly Matched didn't exist, I think Pendulum Magician would be a lot better. True Draco would probably be a bit more relevant as well, but
Yeah.
Evenly Matched sort of puts those decks on the back.
Yeah. Unfortunate. Well, thank you very much. Have you got anything else to add before the end of the interview?
I mean, not really. I suppose I'd give shout-outs. Shout-outs to NCG, all the teams down south. And I suppose, well, that's probably about it. NCG and everyone down south.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us. If you have anyone in mind you want on the next Irish TCG showcase, please leave a comment if you have any questions for myself or Jonathan. Same again, smack down that comment section. But for now, this is Chris from NCG signing out.